Hey guys, what's up and welcome to the channel. I'm the Shotgun Shogun, and after a very long, arduous day of theory crafting sets and builds and how to use both Celine and ML Violet all day yesterday, mostly while I was mowing the grass, we did wake up to the modifier numbers being revealed. Now, the math damage calculator has been updated, so I decided to take some time this morning and really theory craft out things because now I know the hard numbers, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So basically, I was able to use both Blue Kisei and Baiken as my test subjects, right? So I moved gear around on them. I saved a bunch of different layouts, so that way we don't have to go through them really quickly here. So Kisei is going to have the same stat line as ML Violet, and Baiken is going to be the same stat line as Celine. So this was very, very easy for me to go ahead and just kind of hash out the numbers with the gear that I had. Now, Celine is pretty straightforward. You either going to build her like super high DPS, anchor DPS, or you're going to build her to be quick. Now, I also built her to be a mid-ranged bruiser as well because, well, the bruiser meta is real, and I think that is also a viable option for her. So with Kisei and the ML Violet build, I built counterattack, lifesteal, and speed crit, and so I'm going to go over all of those. I also added in Arius and Adamant Shield so that you can see just how much you would be doing against like a mitigation team. That way, you know, you don't int into two knights or an adamant Eaton and go, man, where's all of my damage at? So before we get into that, let's talk about what the actual modifiers are here. So for Celine, on her S1, you're going to have an attack rate of 1 and a power of 1. Her S2 is going to be a attack rate of 1.4 and a power of 1. And then her S3 is going to be 1.8 and then a power of 1 as well. This also increases damage, and that will bring your attack rate up to 2.3. Now, for ML Violet down here, so his S1 is going to be 1 and 1, and his S3 is going to be 1.3 and 1. So while not as good as, you know, Celine, this is going to be a big thing because obviously, you know, you're getting free attacks, right, on his S3. Not only that, but it does increase the attack of the caster before you go in. So one of the things that I did with Celine a little bit during the theory crafting too is I tried her with Portrait for just opening up against, like, let's say a cleave team, an Oxlot's cleave team, and I also ran her artifact at plus 100% chance, so that way she's guaranteed the attack buff before she goes in. And if she's guaranteed the attack buff, her artifact is going to be much better for her. You do have to have it plus 30. Now, on the alternative side, if you are trying to run her as like a tanky a DPS bruiser, you can forego her artifact and put maybe a Violet's Talisman on her, because chances are you're going to be bringing somebody into the team that is going to provide her with an attack buff throughout the fight. So that way you have a little bit more flexibility in your artifact selection. So first off, we're going to start with ML Violet. Now, as you can see, I have all of this stuff up here right now. This is going to be I forget what build this is, but I saved a bunch of them and I can walk you through what we're doing here. Let me do enhance. Okay, so the first one up here is going to be the lifesteal set that I put together for him. Now, the lifesteal, all of these builds have a decent amount of heft. All of them have about 1100 defense and around 13 to 15k hit points, except for the speed set, and that is going to be at 1200 defense and 12k HP. That was about what I could get for actually having decent speed, and that is a 220 speed Violet. So there is that. So these are the stats that I was able to get with 220 speed. Now, also to be fair, my gear is a little bit better. My lifesteal and my counter gear isn't the best in the world, but I made do with what I had here. None of these are running immunity, so if you can get the stats with immunity, the same stats with immunity, probably better for the open, but at the same time, you're going to have the evasion buff right out the gate as well. So I do think that immunity may be a little bit of a waste if you're running something like a Moonlight Dreamblade where you just roll the dice, right? So the first one is going to be lifesteal, and honestly, like, I personally do like lifesteal quite a bit because I feel like it gives him that more sustain, more stability. The lifesteal build does have like 1200, like I said, 1200 defense and about 15k HP. So it's going to be pretty hard to just straight up destroy him. Now, all of these are running Violet's Talisman, as that is going to be the artifact of choice for me anyways, because I do think that you do get more out of that. Now, if you are going to make him really super slow for some reason on a counter set, Moonlight Dreamblade may be better just because you have an inherent 20% right out the gate, whereas Violet's Talisman does need some ramp up time. Now, again, all of these, the lifesteal set build had 180 speed. The counter set, I think, had 160 speed. So there is that to consider as well. I didn't build anything with just no speed whatsoever and just like super tanky counter. I could potentially do that, but I don't think my damage would get much higher, because a lot of that you would have to put into you know, mitigation, right? Because if you're just dirt slow, you are going to want to make sure that you actually stay alive in order to get off your S3s. So the first one is going to be lifesteal, and so as you can see here, the S1 is going to do about 5,500, and this is through Aureus. I assumed that most of these would have an Aureus if you're bringing them in against you know, a bruiser team, if you're bringing him in there. Now his S3 is going to do about 12,000 damage. Now, I also did make sure that on all of these I added in attack ahead of time, because his S3 will give him attack before he does attack. So as you can see, with a tanky lifesteal setup with a decent amount of speed, he's going to be doing 12k on those S3s. Now, one of the big things that you have to kind of consider here is how much damage does he do on his S1? Is he going to be able to, are you going to be able to just completely ignore him, and just, is he a threat, right? Now, all of these do have 100% chance to crit, and so you will be doing 5,500 through Aureus on this lifesteal set right here. So that is pretty decent. I did have more crit damage on this one, and again, this is after 3 turns. I assumed that we would take 3 turns to get an S3 off with the focus, give or take, depending on what it is. So I made sure to max out the Violet's Talismans. That is the extra 30% passive attack included alongside of the attack buff. So as you can see in the second one, if you are inting into a wall team with an Aureus and an adamant shield, by the way, the defense that I am mocking this up against is 1100 defense. Obviously, if you're hitting squishier targets, you're going to be doing more. If you're trying to, you know, hit Fighter Maya, you will be doing exponentially less damage. So one of the big things here too is that your Aureus Adamant is still going to do 10k damage on the S3. So while you're not doing as much damage, you will be doing a decent amount of damage if you are going against a wall team. if you are going against that wall team, it's going to be a sustained battle, and I do think that the lifesteal is going to help you out quite a bit here, because they are any miss damage you can mitigate here, unless you are planning on bringing multiple support units. This is going to definitely help out a lot more than the counter set, in my opinion. Now, one big thing about the counter set here is, like I said, you do have to be a little bit more tanky. So this build, I believe, was 1200 defense and about 17k hit points at about 160 speed. I did use speed main stat boots for this calculation here. As you can see in my set, I do have a little bit more attack, but I do have a lot less critical hit damage. So with a counter set being a little bit slower, you will potentially get more focus on the S1 counter attacks, but I do think that relying on the counter set to proc, first off, you need to actually have people hitting you, which is not very reasonable, right? Especially in RTA when it's a human controlled player. So I think that when it's a human controlled player, they're going to just ignore this Violet and then deal with it when they have something that they can deal with it. You know, a Dizzy, a Falconeer Quarry, something like that is going to be a very hard counter to ML Violet. So not only that, but if you can strip the evasion and defense break with Falconeer Quarry, you are going to be in a much better spot. So boys, build those Falconeer Quarries and those SC Wandas to counter this. So through Adamant Aureus, you're only going to be doing about 8,500 damage. With just Aureus on counter, you'll be doing about 10k, which, I mean, is about 2,000 less than if you were running Lifesteal. But again, you do have increased heft here. The one big thing, though, that I didn't like about this build is that I was a bit slower. So like I said, you can lap and just ignore. If you're up against a fast Falconeer Quarry, they are going to be able to, even with the counter attacks every so often, they will get the cooldown on their S3 a lot faster than you are going to be getting turns, in which case you will have a bad time, because, well, you don't need to hit in order to strip with the S3. And if you're not building for even immunity doesn't matter, because it'll strip the immunity beforehand. But if you're not building effect resist of some sort, then you are going to, or, you know, you get hit with the 15%, but whatever, that's a, you know, a whole other topic. You are not going to be resisting this. I didn't build an effect resist Violet, which I should later, just to see what kind of stats I could get on that. So that was those two. Now for the speed tank bruiser, like I said, this is about 220 speed. I could glass cannon him, but I don't think that that is reasonable. This build was about 1100 defense and about 13k hit points with 220 speed. So it's not the squishiest thing in the world, but you're not going to be taking a ton of hits. I build it kind of like my MRSA, where I want her to do a decent amount of damage, but at the same time, I don't want her to instantly get blown up the moment that anything looks her way. So the first one is going to be against just Aureus, and as you can see, you're doing about 6k damage on the S1, and you're doing about 13k damage on the S3 just through Aureus. And now if you put in an adamant shield, that's going to cut you down to about 1105k. So this is still a decent threat to most things out there. You definitely can't ignore him and let him get a ton of turns on that S1, because he's going to still build up focus. And then when you do have to hit him, or if you're in a situation where, you know, you want to use an AoE but you can't, then he's going to pop off that S3. Not only that, but I mean, he can still just do his S3. It's a long cooldown, but he can still just open with it, get the attack buff for 2 turns, build up some focus, and then just cycle through. Now, if you're going up against a super squish team that has no mitigation and you are running the fast bruiser Violet with the Violet's Talisman, after 3 turns, you will be hitting for 17,000 damage on that S3 counter. You're also going to be hitting for 8k on just your S1. Now, this is if you are able to get rid of their mitigation. However, most people, if they're coming into a bruiser fight, they're going to bring some sort of mitigation with them. So there is that. Now, one thing that I do kind of want to build is like a tanky anchor DPS Violet. Now, I don't think that it will be good in the slightest, right? But I do think that if you are able to build something like that and you're up against an AoE team, right, then you might potentially get a decent amount of S3s off. So we'll see. I'll build that maybe at some point and see. I've got numbers, so I can kind of finagle things around a little bit and just see kind of how things would work off of just my own builds and DP and stuff like that. So that's Violet, ML Violet. And I think that personally, I would like to go, I will probably go either Speed Tank Bruiser or Lifesteal. Now, one of the things is in Arena and Guild Wars, counterattack is probably going to be your best bet, especially in Guild Wars. I think a tanky counterattack ML Violet is going to be just phenomenal because you're going to have 3 units. You're going to have a lot less damage incoming. People aren't going to be able to really cleave you because that will just build up more and more focus. And I think that that is going to be really big there. But if you are going to be using him for RTA, I do think that Lifesteal or Speed Tank Bruiser is going to be your best bet. And you do want to make him a threat that can't be ignored. Now, moving on to Selene, like I said, Baiken is the exact same stats, so it was a lot easier for me to really flesh this out. One of the big things with Baiken as well is that I do have her fully awakened. Oh, one of the things to point out here, he will do a bit more damage. That's why I rounded it up, because I don't have my last imprint on, or my last awakening on Kisei, so that would be an extra 6% attack base. So that's why I kind of rounded some of those numbers up. Now for Selene, I'm going to hop in here. Now I did, like I said, I made a very high damage build that just wanted to focus on the S2 damage there. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to kind of see how it would work against like a cleave team that is going to be pushing with maybe an Oxlots or, something along those lines, to just have her, or even like if you, let's say a Flitica into a CDOM, because CDOM's S3 would trigger her S2 as well, allowing her to potentially one-shot somebody. Now, you're probably not going to run into that situation if you have an Arius Adamant Shield on the team. By the way, this is my Banshee one-shot Baiken team with Portrait of the Savior, so 4,527 attack with 350 crit damage. She's not very tanky in the slightest, but she is built to do damage. Now, in this situation, if you are S2ing into an Arius Adamant, you're going to be doing about 8,700 damage and about 11k on your S3, 14k if you soul burn the S3. Now again, this is dirt slow. This is like 122 speed glass cannon DPS build, so it's really not the best in the world to take in against a wall team. I think that there are other things that you can definitely use. The nice thing is about that S2 is it doesn't actually worry about the damage share mitigation from the Arius, but you would still get the increased defense on the other team. Again, this is against an 1100 defense target. Again, I just use that as kind of a baseline because that is just where I am. A lot of things are going to be a bit higher. Tanky bruisers are going to be a bit higher, but a lot of times things like if you're going against a cleave team, chances are they're probably not running 1800 defense units on their cleave team. So if you go against that with your self artifact, which is going to give you that attack buff right when they use that non-combat skill, you're going to be looking at about 1100 or 11,000 on your S2 and 14k on your S3, with 17 to 18k on your Soulburned S3. So the attack buff really does just hammer it home. Again, these are not with elemental advantage either. So if you add an elemental advantage, that's going to just pump those numbers up even higher. So if you go against a cleave team that has no mitigation whatsoever and you're running this high damage Selene, you're going to one-shot pretty much anything with your S2. Anything that you even remotely look at is going to take 17,000 damage, and then 22,000 from your S3, with 28,000 on your Soulburned S3. So it's gonna be real big damage against anything that has no mitigation whatsoever. So then that's with the self artifact. If you just go with portrait, it's going to be 14k, 18k, and then 23k. So again, I do think that if you are bringing her just a one-shot things right out the gate, her self artifact at plus 30 is going to be better for her. But if you do have somebody, let's say like you're pushing with an Oxlots, right? You kill one thing and then they do a non-combat and then she just kills something else. That actually might not be a bad situation versus certain teams. Maybe like a cleave, you push her and then you have like a cleaver or some AoE that pushes an Elena and then she just pops off against an Elena. I don't know. There's multiple things here, right? So that is with the super high damage build. Now I did do a very super fast build, and this is against no mitigation. I was able to get her to 253 speed. Her S2 will do 8,000. Her S3 will do about 10.5k, and then her Soulburned S3 will do 13k. Now this is not my fastest gear. I didn't see a reason to put my super fastest gear on her. This is more of my high speed damage. This was my Assassin Sid gear that I was using on her just to see how fast I could get her with good damage. So not the most impressive damage in the world, especially with her S2. However, you would be cycling her S2 fairly quickly. And yeah, I personally wouldn't go with that build. The build that I have as the last build here is a bruiser build. Oh no, the second one is with herself. That was the high speed with herself artifact. However, if you're really high speed, you can't really rely on a non-combat skill to proc that attack buff. So kind of meh. Don't build her for high speed personally. So with the last one is more of a bruiser build. So this one dropped her down to 200 speed. I gave her about 16k hit points with about 1200. It was, I think, 1100 defense. This is on her own artifact. So because I would assume that she is going to go through and there's probably going to be a non-combat skill that's going to hit. So that's kind of what I did here. Alternatively, you could run her on maybe like a Dream Blade, get the attack buff before you get hit into this stuff, and go from there. So as you can see with Arius, it really cuts her damage down in a bruiser build. You're going to only be hitting for about 6,600, 8,500 on your S3, and then 10k, 11k on your S3 Soulburn. That's against an Arius Adamant. Against just Arius itself, you're going to be about 8k, 10k, and then 13k. So reasonable damage there. If you're going against no mitigation, however, you are going to be popping off for about 10.5 on the S2, 13.5 on the S3, and then about 17k on the S3. Now that is, like I said, with a speedy DPS bruiser build, that is what you're going to be going. And again, these are all plus 15 molas. That's what I'm testing against, and against a 1100 defense. Now, you're not going to be finding 1100 defense like a Momos, DNs, or anything like that, but I do think that the Bruiser build is interesting, and I think that it would work very well if they're bringing things like, let's say, you know, DN, a Momo, Seaside Bell, things like that. If you need to counter those, again, this is also against I didn't put a elemental advantage in because her S2 randomly hits things, so you can't really pick it. Obviously, if you put the elemental advantage in, you're just going to be doing more damage. So overall, I do think that her artifact is good for her if you're going to be doing a slower high damage build where you just really want to destroy something with her S2. If you are going with the third build, which is like a speedy bruiser, Violet's Talisman is not bad, although I do think that it works better on ML Violet, Mursa, people who have inherent evasion, just to stack that up because they have that evasion already, so they're going to have the mitigation. They're going to be around for 3 turns. If you are just thinking about ending it in like 1 turn, first off, I don't think that you should bring either of these if you're planning on 1 or 2 turning, because these two, I think you need to have some ramp up on them. I think that they're going to be good for like breaking stall teams, things along those lines. So I do think that Violet's Talisman does work very well on both of them because you will get the stacks, right? You can also potentially run RNL on them. However, I don't really like the chance. We'll run RNL on her. I don't think RNL would work very well on ML Violet. But on her, it would be good because it would help you cool down your S3 and your S2 a lot faster. So I do think that the kind of bruiser build is probably one of the best ones for her. You can do the super high damage one again if you just want to like pop off against like a cleave team, right? I do think that she's going to be probably pretty good in Guild Wars as well. I think both of these units are going to be very good in Guild Wars because you have a lot lower chance, you got a better chance of hitting a important target, right? Chances are you're not going to, if you're going to try to judge Kisa cleave somebody through Guild Wars, you're not bringing much mitigation, so whatever Celine hits is going to die. Most likely if you have her artifact, and you do high damage, right? So even if you were to lose that one, the upside is that they do kill one of their units, right? So if you kill the Oxlots, they can't use that in any of the other fights. So while you take an L, they also take an L. So that is pretty much like the big thing here. Now, I think that the modifiers are pretty good for what you can get here in terms of damage. You do need to plus 15 both of them, because especially ML Violet, if you don't plus 15 him, his S1 isn't going to be a threat and people are just literally going to ignore him. That is something that I would do. If he was not hitting me for much on his S1, I would just ignore him until I can deal with him later. You are going to need to watch out, like I said, for Falconeer Quarries. You're going to watch out for SC Wandas. You're going to have to watch out for Dizzies, things like that. But thankfully in RTA, you can just ban those. And in Arena, you can just not fight them. In Guild Wars, you'll have a little bit of a harder time because if you try to use them as defense, that's 3 units that they're just going to bring against you. So you might want to run him like, say, with Champ Zerato to prevent Dizzies. You might want to run him with Cleansers or DJ Bassars, something along those lines, in order to kind of mitigate some of those weaknesses. But anyways, guys, those are the numbers. Those are some of the builds and some of my thoughts on both Celine and ML Violet. Let me know what you guys think. I do think that Guild Wars wise, counterattack is going to be really, really strong for ML Violet, but we'll see. I definitely do plan on building him. I think that he's going to be insanely good. I'm going to save my molas from now until when he comes out and still not have enough, but that is a whole other issue. Celine, I will be pulling for her just to put a hot MILF on my bench because she will look hot sitting there. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. What builds have you guys come up with? I have seen some interesting builds with like Dust Devil counter Violet, which seems pretty interesting, but there's a lot of RNG in that, and I try to take out as much RNG as possible. If you guys are not subscribed yet, as always, think about subscribing. And if you think about subscribing and you do, I appreciate it. Also hit the bell so that you get updated on the 17 to 22 videos that I make a day, because I got a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. If you want to share this out, that would be cool. Helps me out, helps out the channel. If you want to join Patreon, that would be phenomenal as well. I don't usually mention that, but if you do, it helps me out. But as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy, homies. Peace.
Crack it.